Hello my lovelies and welcome back to a Kooky corner of YouTube. Today, as promised, I'm going to go through my technique of making a piece of slow stitch to work. This is one that I showed on the Instagram pictures in my, if you check on Cool Kooky Creatures on Instagram, there's a picture of this. I did a sneak peek in the YouTube community pages, which you might have seen as well. But yes, what I'm going to go through is basically my own process. I don't know how right or wrong it is, but it worked for me and I thought you might like to see. I'm no way an expert in this. There are many people out there who are much better equipped for making and showing you how to do this, but I thought I would show you my technique because some people expressed an interest, and always happy to show how I get things done. I have been a slow stitcher for many years. I didn't actually call it that, probably more embroidery, hand embroidery, but I was lucky enough many years ago to do a course with my daughter. It was a very small, like, workshoppy course with Janet Bolton, who was a great and still is a great name in the embroidery world, and her method of slow stitching is absolutely fabulous and gave us lots of ideas for our own pieces of work. Everything that she does is hand done. All the seams are hand pressed. She showed us how she finger presses all the seams and everything, obviously using an iron to press things down, but as she's working she kind of presses things down and then adds bits in. And the way she puts together fabrics is fascinating. So if you ever do get a chance to go and see someone like Janet Bolton at work, I definitely recommend that you do that. As you know, or if you've been on my channel for any length of time, you know that I'm quite a colourful hound and I love the colours, and I would throw in every colour if I could. But with this piece I tried to pick greens, blues and a little bit of pink, and I'm going to probably stick with the same colourway, but you can pick out any colours you want to do for your piece. I'm going to stick to a very small piece to start off with because it's like a learning piece, and so I'm going to show you the techniques that I use on a very small scale. I've already shown this one on my channel previously, and that's where I thought I'd make a tutorial for you all to look at. This is like a journal wrap, so this is quite a bit bigger, but you can see that the techniques that I use are very similar, so you can expand what you learn with this to make something bigger like this. So without further ado, let us get into the method of how to make ourselves a little piece of heavenly embroidery. So for this tutorial you'll need some scraps of fabric. If you're anything like me, who is a womble, and I store every single bit of scrap fabric that I use, so if I'm making something I'll keep the scraps in a separate box. If you don't, you can use any fabric you've got, anything at all, as long as it's kind of in tune with what you want to make and kind of matches together with your colour scheme. You will need some threads. Now the threads I suggest are either the embroidery threads that you get, which get 6 strands on them. You can separate them out into different thicknesses, so you can have 2 strands together, 3 strands together, or all 6 together. On some occasion I do that as well. If you have any of the DMC pearl threads that are the number 8, I think it's DMC 8 pearl thread, they are the perfect size for couching down things, and also the stitches here are the perfect size with that particular thread. That's a DMC 8 that I've used there. But I'll show you all these in a minute. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let me grab hold of my scrap box and I'll show you what I mean by being a womble. here it is in all its glory. Let's take you up a little bit further. There we go. So yes, this is my scrap box of things. Looks like it's some kind of a pattern. Don't know why that's in there. But yes, I have got some pre-cut pieces in here of felt. So the size you're going to need, the size that I'm doing for this, obviously you can pick your own size if you want to go a bit bigger, but I suggest starting a little bit smaller just to give yourself an idea of how it feels, because you might do a bit of it and think that's not for me, but you don't want a finished piece, so you could finish it off and think, well, that's it, I'm done with that. Or you could think, I love this, I'm going to do more. So you can, this is not the actual stitched area, this is the backing for the stitched area. So what you would need is a piece this size in a cotton fabric. So let me grab one out of here that I've picked out already to go with. So this is a piece of blue cotton fabric. It's slightly bigger, just slightly bigger than the felt. The felt I use is like a batting, but if you've got some batting, that if you make quilts and things, you probably have extra bits of batting left over that you can also use. So either of those things are going to work great. I just use this because I've got this to hand. I have a few squares of this I have hanging around in this particular size, which is why I worked with it. So a piece of batting or a piece of felt for the backing and a base fabric to go over that. So I've picked out these two. So I've got this green felt, which won't show through at all. It's just basically, as I say, a batting. And then a piece of fabric. So 4 inches by 4 inches or 10 centimetres by 10 centimetres, whichever takes your fancy. Now in here I've got lots and lots of little bits of fabric, and what you're doing when you lay down fabrics onto your pieces, you're kind of looking at the pieces and auditioning them for a part in your piece. So you kind of just lay them down. It's a bit like fabric collage is how I would say it works. And I have pulled a few bits out, so let me pop that down there. So with this piece, which wants to curl up, but I will be pressing these down with an iron before I start to stitch them, because it just makes things a little bit easier. And here are the little bits that I pulled out, so I'll take you back down again. So you're just kind of laying them on in some kind of an order that pleases you. Try and lay that down. And this is not a cotton, well, it is a cotton, it's a corduroy. It's like a needle cord, but it's really thin. You don't want to pick fabrics that are too thick, because number one, you're going to get really sore fingers from trying to push your needle through. Number two, it's going to bulk up your piece more than needed. But you know, if it fits, use it. That's what I say. So we're just laying our pieces on and building up something that we like as a collage. I'm kind of just trying out different bits. Don't worry about all these bits and things. Any bits that fray off we can just pull off, because we're going to be working with the raw edges anyway. I might want to cut this one down actually, because it's kind of a bit bigger. So yeah, so that's kind of nice. Try and keep within the edges. Leave yourself like a 1/2 centimetre edge around it, because you won't actually be putting anything on there that's going to be needed especially. So yeah, you're just playing around. I liked this bit because if you see on this one, I've got like a little plant pot or a flower vase or whatever you want to call it on there, and I thought it'd be good to try and do something similar with this one. So let me take that down there a bit. This is nice and shiny. Would that fit under there? maybe smaller perhaps, maybe just a little bit smaller. I could snip that down, lay that underneath there, put this one back on top. This is really a pleasing part. It's kind of just like you say, finding things that fit and things that make you happy. So I don't need that bit there. Cut a square of that off. Oh, I could lay that in there perhaps as a background. Not sure if I'm going to fit this in anywhere. It might be too much, but always pull out more than you think you're going to need, because you can just then try things and see how it goes. So my plant pot, if I'm calling that a ground, would sit either there or there, probably. So when you are happy with how your piece is looking, then what we're going to do is we're going to just simply tack these pieces down for now, so that they're not all flopping around when you're trying to stitch them. So what I would do now, and what I am going to do now, is I'm going to take these pieces over to the ironing board and just give them a quick iron over, as in situ, basically trying to keep them all together, and then I'll show you what we do next. Do not iron anything metallic like this. So this bit I'm not going to iron because it's got a lot of metallic-y sequiny bits which will just melt, so that's not a good idea, but the cotton pieces will iron perfectly well. So I'm going to go and iron this, and then I'll be back and I will show you how we work on this next. So I've ironed down my piece, as you can see here. Everything's positioned where I want it to be, and the next thing I'm going to do is to tack it down. But before I do that, I thought I'd show you some of the colours I've picked out for the actual stitching on this piece. So these are the DMC Cotton Pearl 8 in the different colours I've got here: 600, 996, 907 and 741. Now I realise I didn't have much orange in this piece, but I'm going to try and bring a little bit of orangey in with that button. I also managed to find a piece of I was learning how to free stitch or free embroidery words when I was using my sewing machine, so I found one of those that I did on a piece of felt, so I thought that would fit in quite nicely, so that's going in as well. And these 3 buttons that I had in my little button pot, which will finish it off nicely. Obviously there's going to be embroidery and everything else going along. If you don't have this, any cotton will do that you've got. You can double it up, you know, if you've got ordinary sewing thread, that will work, but pure cotton works really well. And if you've got cross stitch threads, if you've made a collection of those as I have here, then you can pick out threads that match to this, and you can use these in different lengths. So I'm just going to have a look in here, see what I've got. I've got this here, which is quite nice, so that one's going to go in. I wanted to grab another orange because I've got this one here, so I want something more akin to that button there, if I can find it. I don't know if I've actually got anything that will match. Can't see anything great in there, so I think I'll just leave it at that. I've got those 5 threads that I'm going to work with, and that's plenty for now. Obviously you're going to need some tacking thread, so any colour of tacking thread will do. You can either leave your tacking stitches in, or you can take them out at the end. But what I'm going to do now is very carefully tack all these pieces down, not the buttons especially because I know where they're going, but everything else I'm going to tack down so that we can see what we've got, and we're not going to have pieces flapping around and disappearing when we're trying to stitch. Okay, so what we're going to do now is I've taken a length of like tacking thread. I've just used this, it's a great big industrial size roll that I have, and placed a knot in the end just to hold it together. Now this is where the fun starts, because all I'm going to do is to take it right from the back of, oh yeah, hopefully the knot was not big enough. Let's try again. the way. Let's make a knot. That's big enough. Trying to keep everything in position. If it slides out of the way a little bit, it's not a big deal. So we're going through all of the layers. Hopefully it'll stay in place this time. And I'm just going to do tacking stitches. These I will remove, so they don't have to be accurate. They're just going to be joining stitches that just keep everything in place. So I'm going to do a tiny one in there, bring it back out there, and just trying to keep everything together. That's all we want to do, so that it's not flapping around and in your way. Another way you could do this if you wanted to would be to have some fabric glue or a bit of Pritt stick, but I'm always slightly worried that it will work its way through to the front of the fabric. So although I do use it in my needle felting, I haven't yet tried it in something that's mainly fabric. So you can see I'm just not caring which direction I'm going in. I'm just moving as and when I need to. Jumping at the back, it doesn't matter because this will be removed. Now if it doesn't annoy me too much and it's not causing me any problem, then I'll probably leave the tacking stitches in, because to be honest it's just another texture you're adding in. So it doesn't really have to be removed if you don't want to remove it. On some of the pieces I've done, I've just left them in, just left the tacking stitches where they were. It's a very forgiving way of stitching, and what I like to think about this is kind of a mindful stitching method, because you are just enjoying the freedom. There's no rules. You know, you use whichever stitches you want to use, wherever you want to use them, in a way that pleases you. I'm just going to show you the basic things that I do in order to put a piece together, but that's not to say that my way is the only way. There are many different ways to do this, but I think you can see from what I'm doing here, I'm just literally pinning stuff down. You could actually use pins. The only problem I have with that is you could do yourself a little bit of a mischief with the pins when you're trying to sew, and they get in my way. They kind of just cause me to think more, whereas when I've tacked everything down and I'm kind of happy that it's safely in place, then I don't have to worry about it, and I don't have to worry about being unnecessarily jabbed. No one wants an unnecessary jabbing, do they? No. I'll show you the back of this in a minute when I have finished tacking these bits down. It's literally a jumping from one bit to another. I'm just doing like just one stitch just to hold things in place in all of the loose pieces. Obviously I've not put the buttons on yet because I can do that later. Put them to one side. And again, with like decorations and such, you can add in sequins, you can add in glitter fabric, like I did with this one with that piece in the middle there. This piece of sari fabric had some sequins and glittery stuff on it already, so I don't need to add any more glitz in. I know I'm a magpie, but there are limits. But no, if you are an absolute magpie, you could just go mad and add loads of glitzy bits in. There are no stitching police for this. Right, I think I've got everything in place. Nothing's falling off, that's good. If we look on the back, you can see I've jumped all over the place, and that is just fine. We've got everything down that we need to have down in the places we want it to be. So I'm going to take my thread here, and just to keep it in place, like that, and then when we want to, if we need to, we can go back in and pull all these out. So that's why I've done it in a white thread, so that it will show up, because all of my other threads will be in a colour. Okay, so we've got this piece, it's all tacked. threads like this, you can either do a chop, get rid of them if they're getting on your nerves, getting in the way, just to trim them down a bit. All of these threads will keep their raw edges. I'm not going to turn anything under on here. I'm just going to, like this, if you've got threads here that are annoying, just pull them out, get rid of them. It's such a freeing way to stitch and I absolutely love it. And it's a really nice creative way to get yourself a piece of artwork, or I don't know, just to make yourself something that's going to have some use, like my my wrap. You know, start with something small. You could even make lots of small things and join them together and make like a small quilted thing, like a little mat or something. It is totally up to you. So I've got to decide where I'm going to start. It doesn't really matter. So I'm going to start with the pot, I think. And I'm going to go in with this thread. You can see it's quite a thick thread. And as to needles, any needles you've got will be fine. I have got some specific sashiko needles, which is basically what this idea borrows from. It's kind of like sashiko stitching and making a borrow, which is using scrap fabrics. The Japanese borrows are made from scrap fabrics and sashiko thread. So do I want to go around, or do I want to just add a basic overall stitch? This is the question. And these are little decisions you can make as you go along. There's no planning especially involved. The biggest planning is just deciding where all your pieces are going to go, and then it's all plain sailing from there. I'm going to use this thread to do what they call a first pass over the thread, and I'm just going to do a very simple running stitch, and I'm going to do 2 strands of this embroidery thread. And you just literally separate it out. Sorry if the sun shine's causing a bit of havoc. It's been playing around on my desk today, so I separated out 2 strands and I'm going to thread the needle, and I'm going to put a knot in the end of it. It's not going to work because I'm doing it with the wrong hand. Let's do it with the correct finger. There's always a correct finger. There we go. Right, so I'm going to start at this top right hand corner, just in there, and I'm going to literally do a running stitch all over my pieces here. Any stray threads, just taking them off. There's no machine involved in any of this at all. It is purely hand stitching. And if you want to make bigger things where you're going to need to make seams and such, then fair enough. But for this purpose, it's getting into the mind of just you and the stitch. Mindful stitching. And I'm just going to take this over here like this. Kind of going in a straightish line, not worrying too much about any imperfections in my stitch line, in the stitch, because it is perfectly imperfect. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to run stitches up and down there. I'm going to avoid that, so I'm going to maybe skip through there because I want to do something else on that particular piece. But from there I'd go down here, down to the next part here, put 1 stitch in there maybe, make sure that's pulled 2, and then this is going to be a big long skip stitch at the back, but just for purposes of missing that piece out. And it is just a big running stitch. You can do a few at once if you like, but just don't pull it too tight. It will make a texture. As I say, you can get stuck if you try and do too many at once. And as it goes along, it will make a texture. I'll be back at the end. I'll have gone all over this. I'm going to miss stitching over that and miss stitching over that for now, but the rest of it is all going to get a long row of stitches going all the way down. I'll be back when that's done. Okay, so I am back. So I have gone literally up and down this piece with a running stitch. It unifies the piece because it's all one colour, so it kind of brings all the little pieces together. I avoided this bit and I've avoided this bit as much as I can. I probably put a couple of stitches in there just to hold it down. You can see now everything's much more secure, and so what I'm going to do now is to start adding some more stitches in. So I've got all my stitches here, all my threads here should I say, not stitches, and I'm going to use some of the colours to just unify all the pieces. So this piece hasn't got any pink in it, so conversely I'm just going to go around the edges in pink because it brings in the pink from the pot of flowers there, just to balance it out. And this whole piece is made up just of running stitches. Let me see if I can just home that in a little bit for you. It's made up of running stitches and stab stitches or straight stitching. So there's no weird stitches in this. I mean, you can obviously go through your repertoire of stitches if you're an embroiderer and add in whatever you want to add in, and everything will look fine. It's just a case of thinking about your colour choices and then just going at it with a needle. You can see I'm just going around the edge of each of these pieces. Where it's hidden, I'm not going to bother. So only on the pieces that are exposed. The raw edges can stay. I'm not turning anything underneath because this piece is just purely fun and decoration. So taking this around all the edges. Being careful not to stab your fingers when you're going, because that takes away the Zen-like mindfulness. If you scream in the middle, not so good. And continuing to take it all the way around that one piece of fabric. Now if you wanted to, if you didn't want to do contrasting, you could do a matching thread. So you could have taken maybe that blue and gone around the edges, or another blue that matches in. But I quite like the contrasts. I tend to use them a lot in all of the things that I do. If I'm doing an art piece, I tend to use contrasting colours. If I'm doing a needle felter piece, again, similarly I will use contrasting colours. Any of these little threads that pop up, just pull them out. I've got a little thread jar here that I just pop them all in if you look in there. Any spare threads. And I find that's quite handy to look at. It's quite interesting to see how many different colour threads you'd used over a certain amount of time. Right, so I'm just going to finish off there, because on this next piece I'm going to go around with another colour, and I'm literally just going to do that stitch all around all the pieces just to get them all down, and then we'll add some other marks in. So I'll be back. So you go away also if you want to, and go around all the edges of your pieces that you've added in as your collage, and then you can also bring in going around the edges of your added in pieces. Like this I call an added in piece because this is going to be my plant pot or vase or whatever you want to call it. So I'll be back in a short while and I will have gone around all these pieces. Okay, so here I am back with the piece which I have stitched around all of the edges of all the little pieces, including my plant pot, which has now been securely stitched down. Whilst I was away, I also stitched on these 3 buttons which I wanted in those particular places, and because I was in the mood, I added some more stitching into the middle of these 4 squares here. No, 3 squares, I apologise, it is these 3 here. These 3 here have got some little stitches. You know how we went across with a running stitch straight up all along the bottom? Well, I've just gone the other way in different colours just to highlight them, so I've kind of made contrasting colour choices for each of those squares. So that's what I'd like you to have a go at now, if you've a mind to. So once you've been outlined all the little squares with your straight stitch, then go back in with the running stitch and just complete stitches in some areas on your piece. As I say, I've done it in those areas on mine, so there's those 3 areas that I've worked on. I am now going to stop this video here because I want to show you some other things that we can do to it. You could literally just leave it at that. That would be acceptable as a piece to finish, and some people won't want to take it any further. But what I want to do in the next video, which will not be long, I promise you, it won't be a long stretch in between, it'll probably be tomorrow maybe, or the day after. So it's either going to be out on Saturday or Sunday. And I'm going to show you how I do like a plant in there, in that little pot. It doesn't have to be a pot, it could just be a square. But if you wanted it to be a little plant pot with a plant in it, like I did with this one, let me grab it out again. So that one I kind of changed it into a little flower pot with some flowers in it. This one will be a plant. So if you want to come back for that second video, I will also show you how I finish off the edges. Again, it's absolutely not necessary to do that, but if it's another step that you'd like to do, then I will show you how to do that in the next video. And also, if you wanted to display it somewhere, I will show you how I would also go about displaying it. So finishing off your stitches is the next bit that you need to do, so adding in all those little bits. If you want to add in some other little stitches anywhere else, you can do. It is totally up to you, but finish all your stitching off and then come back and see me tomorrow or the day after. I can't remember if I'm going to be Saturday or Sunday when I'll upload the next one, and I will show you extra bits that you can add in. Added extras. That's it for now. I'm sure that will keep you going until I come back again with some extra little bits to show you that you can add into it. Have a great day, enjoy your stitching, and please just be safe, people. I'll see you soon. Bye for now. Just left this town while I'm slowly heading back to my apartment.